All right, 5.4. Complete the square. Oh, so I don't know why I said 5. 3.4. Complete the square. The skill. First thing we're going to do is talk about a perfect square trinomial. And we're going to write down what a perfect square trinomial is. We talked about it a little bit with factoring, and we're going to talk about it some more. Perfect square trinomial is this. It has a specific format. Notice that the first and the last terms are perfect squares. Okay? And our pattern tells me that it factors a repeated factor. Now, right? Me writing it like that helps me check the foiling, but really, it's this. However, there could be a negative in the middle term. Which tells me that there's a negative here. It's a perfect square trinomial because you have the same factor twice. Okay. Formula. X squared plus bx plus c. So c equals. We're going to leave a little bit of space here. And we're going to do some examples and develop the formula. And then we'll come back and write it. Giving you a formula without explaining it is not very useful, because then you just have to memorize it and you're not going to remember it. So we're going to develop it first. Examples. Okay. Find C. Okay. So find missing. Okay. We'll just call it find the missing term. To make the expression a perfect square trinomial. Write it as a perfect square. Okay. Example. X squared plus 6x plus blank. I want that to be a perfect square trinomial, which means it has to be the same factor twice. I want you to draw a little box over here. I'm going to give you a visual graphic organizer to help explain why this is called perfect square. And yes, that first top left box is a little bit bigger than the other ones. I'm going to start filling in the box. Now this box is to represent my FOIL. First outer, inner last. Okay, I am trying to make this a perfect square. where I am going to get the same factor twice. Okay, my first term is x squared. Now, my middle term is 6x, but because it's a perfect square, I actually need my outer and my inner to be the same. So I'm going to split the 6x evenly between these two boxes. A perfect square means the inner and the outer are exactly the same. How many of you have ever done foiling with the box method? Yes, okay, cool. How many of you done a Punnett square in science? Okay, it's basically the same thing. We're going to put an x and an x outside because x times x is x squared. What times x is 3x? 3. The reason this is called completing the square, notice that so far in this filled out square, I have a missing box. The last term is missing. What do you think will go in the last box if I am lining up my rows and columns by multiplying? A 9. Okay, so now I'm trying to meet you where you're at. Some of us like to FOIL with a box. Some of us have learned factoring with a box. Great. Some of you have done a Punnett square where you're used to lining up the rows and the columns and multiplying. It's called completing the square because the yellow box was empty and you figured out what number goes there to complete the square. Okay, so if this is my trinomial, what multiplies to 1 and 9 and then adds to 6? X plus 3 and x plus 3, which means that's it. What's the missing number? 9. How does it factor? Like this. I need you to go from this line to this line without that middle step. We are not writing this middle step. You need to go from here to here. Eventually, you need to not write the box. Okay, so let's do one more. X squared minus 8x plus what? Sorry. What's going to go in that line in order to complete the square? Okay, so the visual helps me figure out what I'm actually multiplying together. The side boxes have to be the same, right? Inner has to equal outer. Can somebody tell me how exactly I chose minus 4x? Yes, Sarah? Because they add up to, well, they add up to -8. Yes. Okay, they add up to -8. Can someone else tell me why I choose -4? Like, how do I get to -4? What did you do to pick -4 out of the hat? Yes, Lauren? Oh, I divided by 2. Yeah, divided by 2. I needed to half the middle term so that I had the same number in both boxes. Good. All right. Okay, what goes in the yellow square? 16. Yes. Positive 16? Yes, because even a -4 times a -4 is positive. Okay, what goes in my parentheses? If you draw the box, you kind of already have the factoring done. Right? But eventually, we're going to take the graphic organizer away. That's just to help you with the visual of what you're doing. Okay, we need to go from the perfect square trinomial to the perfect square. Okay, so what we did is we developed the formula. So how do I find C? How'd we get 16 in a formula kind of a way? I did negative 4 times negative 4. And I did 3 times 3. Half of b squared. That's your formula. Why did I half my middle term? Because I had to split it evenly. Why did I square it? Because I had to take the last terms multiplied together. Okay, so what goes here? This is the formula, guys. Once you understand where it's coming from, it's better than just blindly throwing letters down. Okay, what goes in my parentheses? Well, I know it's an x because x times x. But what goes in the last spot, right? What goes here? 1/2 b. Correct. Notice they're connected. Okay? Why? Because b over 2 times b over 2 is how you're going to get that last term. Solving. Okay? Solve by completing the square. Now, because we are solving, I do have to keep in mind my flow chart that's part of your quiz today. Okay? First, I isolate x if there is only one x. Right? That was part of your warm-up. Isolate if possible. 2, a factor if possible. 3rd, oh crap, this catches everything. If you can't do the first 2, you have to solve by completing the square. Now, the farther down this list you go, the more complicated the solving actually gets. Okay? The more steps that are involved. You complete the square. Keep in mind, completing the square is going to have its own set of steps that you have to follow. The flow chart, this is the do what when. This is the thinking part. Now that you decide which method you're doing, now you get into the skill. The C square is for complete the square. Just abbreviation. Okay. 2x squared minus 8x plus 1 equals 0. And so I will give you the procedure for solving by completing the square. First thing you're going to do, well, can you factor this? No. Right? First you need to decide that you can't factor. So I'll just show you. 1 and 2, 1 and 1. You're like, nope, factoring's not going to work. That leaves me with complete the square. First thing we're going to do is divide by a. Notice those formulas on the first page, they had an a of 1. So let's divide everything by 2. And I know it doesn't divide evenly, guys. You're just going to have to do it. This is why it said review fractions. It could happen. All right. Step number 2. Set up your plus C button, right? Set up for the plus C. What's going to make this a perfect square trinomial? Okay, so x squared blank. So the 1/2 is obviously not the right number, so I'm going to move it out of the way. Minus 1/2. Now I put a blank on both sides for Candy. Can anyone tell me why there's a plus blank on both sides? Don't yell it. Why did I put it on both sides? Matt? Property of equality. Go up and grab a piece. Property of equality, guys. This is now an equation. Please do the same thing to both sides of the equation. Okay. Set up for your plus C and actually fill in the blank. Okay, fill in the blank. This is why we practice the blank. Find the yellow square. Put the number in. Too big. All right, what number goes in the yellow box? 4. Very nice. Notice how I didn't draw the box or I didn't write a formula because we already know how to do that. Okay, now I will put a little reminder here. Half the number and square it. Sometimes you see people write it right here. Half of it and square it. Okay, I can reduce. I can do it. Because this is actually negative. Right, -4 over 2. B is a negative number right now. But squaring a negative is positive. Okay, step 3. Factor the left side. Right, we made it a perfect square trinomial. Let's write it as the perfect square. What number, don't yell it, goes here? Yeah? -2, yes. Okay. What number goes on the other side? Not 0. Yeah? 3 and can you give me a mixed improper fraction? Improper fractions. 7 over 2. Yes. Okay. Okay, so just a little arithmetic, right? It was 1/2 plus 8 over 2, so that was 7 over 2. All right. Step 4. Finish solving for x. How many x's do you see? 1. Isolate. Yeah, you got to go all the way back up to step 1 of solving. Isolate your x. Okay. And then I have to think to myself, right, there's a lot of little things in here. Is that how you write your radical? Did I add my fractions correctly? That's why you got to master the skill as we do it. You should be able to simplify your radical from the very first lesson. You should be sort of okay with isolating your x right from here. We did it in the warm-up. We did it last class in our versatile. Okay? And x equals 2 plus or minus root 14 over 2. That is your answer. Okay. The steps are written over here. Divide by A. Set up your plus C. Actually find your C. Factor and solve. Let's see if we can't go through them. And I'm going to scale back the amount of work that I'm showing so that it's easier to follow. X squared minus 6x plus 4. Now the lesson is complete the square. However, I don't want you to forget to check the factoring. What if I sneak a factoring question into the homework? You would want to factor instead of complete the square. Okay? So just make sure you're considering it. If you can factor, don't complete the square. Right? If you look at here, look at your this is the easiest to hardest of methods. Always start easiest. Get those out of the way, then spend time on the ones that take multiple steps. I don't, but I do have a sharp pencil. Okay. There's more than one x I can't isolate. I'm looking at my flowchart. It can't factor. Now I complete the square. Okay, step 1. Divide by a. Well, a is 1, so nothing changes. Step 2. Set up your plus c and actually find your c. And yes, I do draw the blank. Fill in the blank. Maybe off to the side, I show a little work. But try not to mess up the actual flow of solving the equation. So I get 9. You want to do it in a different color so you can tell what number you had to pull out of your head? Right? 9 is nowhere on the paper. You got to come up with it. Step 3. Factor. This is why you have to be convinced without any extra steps that that's how that trinomial factors. Equals 5, okay? 4. Actually finish solving for x. Now that there's only one of them, solve for x. Because the b is negative, right? Because think outer and inner, they both have to be negative. Okay.